Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Howell Township Mayor and Council's public participation meeting of May 8th. The time is approximately 7:30. Mr. Davis, would you please read the appropriate statement?
Yes, sir. Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this special meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner. By the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on May 2nd, 2007, and by the faxing of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press and Tri-Town News for publication on May 2nd, 2007, and by the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's office on May 2nd, 2007. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of the public laws in 1975, Chapter 127, NJAC 17:27. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with 3 emergency exits for your safety. The locations are as follows. Upon exiting the meeting room to the rear, they are to immediate left and immediate right, and at the front of the meeting room to the left of the dais. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77.
Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Davis.
Mrs. Dalton?
Here.
Mr. Howell?
Here.
Mrs. Showmaker?
We expect to hear shortly. Is that right, Mr. Chansky? Are you aware?
She did not, I didn't
Okay.
hear from her today.
Okay, I'm certain she'll ultimately be here.
Mr. Walsh?
Mr. Walsh is out of town.
And Mayor DeBell?
Here.
3 present, currently mayor, and 2 absent.
Okay, everyone please rise for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I would ask that everyone just please remain standing for a moment of silent observation in thought of the troops that defend this country all over the world. Thank you. Okay, I see that we have both hearing of citizens and a budget discussion. And let the record reflect Councilman Showmaker is here. Good evening, Mrs. Showmaker. Why don't we go to hearing of the public citizens first? Anyone who would like to be heard, this is our public participation meeting. You're welcome to come forward. Mr. Lariah, welcome, sir.
Thank you. Vince Lariah, 56C in the Villages. Initially, I had got on the list to talk about an item on the budget, but that was clarified with Mr. Filiatro, and I'm okay with that.
Great.
I wanted to use this as an opportunity, as a platform for some of my concerns of what I see coming down in some of the ordinances that are getting passed. In particular, last week we talked about and approved the new towing, or some features of towing ordinance. And one of the things that struck me was that we're standing on our heads, and this is the way I'm seeing it. We're standing on our heads to collect all of this drippings, possible drippings from wrecked automobiles, putting them on an impervious surface, and then what are we going to do with it? It's going to wind up in a stream. It's going to go be very efficiently conducted to a stream which we're going to be using for our water. And I don't think this is the place to decide what we can do about it. But what's wrong with getting some oil in soil? There are all kinds of organisms in soils that will attack most of these materials. I prefer to see little organisms eating up any dripping of oil than see it getting into our water system. We chlorinate it and start jacking up the chlorinated hydrocarbons. I don't know what to do about it, but I just wanted the opportunity to get it off my chest. And
I appreciate your comments, Mr. Lariah. Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to make any comments during the public portion? No one else. Okay, we will close the public portion of the meeting. Mr. Czerniecki, I believe we have some unfinished budget discussions to review. Is that right, sir?
Yes, so just a few things to follow up from last week. So not a full budget discussion, and I wanted to save that for a full council meeting, which we'll do next week, and hopefully we'll be in a position to introduce. But a couple items that council commented on at the meeting, and then let me just say subsequently, Councilmember Howell dropped off a budget with a number of questions and points on it, which I'll save for next week. I'm not prepared to address that tonight. The other items were matters we had to research a little bit. So, Mayor, I gave you the PowerPoint presentation, printout version, as well as on disk. And I just want to cover tonight, I want to go over police overtime. I want to go over what's included in the intersection improvement portion of the capital budget. And Jeffrey is going to talk about the insurance increases. And there was also a request for information on the balance in the basin maintenance accounts. So those are the only points I just want to talk on tonight, see if there's more guidance from the governing body. And there are some personnel and litigation issues for closed session.
Okay, any questions or comments from the council before we begin? Is that, everyone satisfied with that as a process?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Czerniecki.
Okay, Mayor, on the PowerPoint presentation handout, I numbered the pages. If I can ask the governing body to turn to page 13.
Okay.
Okay. I'll just summarize these points. There is a concern that the overtime for police was budgeted at $225,000, and the actual expenditure was $413,000. I just want to make it clear that the those two items and part-time salaries are all fall under salary and wage. And overall, the police department's salary and wage budget came in under budget. So this overtime was inclusive in that. And I think that is important to point out. In looking at some of the hours and the timesheets and speaking with the chief and the finance officer, here are the points that jumped out to me that would explain why the drastic rise in overtime. First, I think the biggest point is this. In the PBA contract, the first 120 hours of overtime are taken as compensatory time, and an officer can carry that much time on the books. Now, that contract was approved in 2005, and at this point, most officers are at that max number of hours that they can carry, so any overtime they're incurring now is being taken as paid cash. In 2006, there were 2 mandatory training sessions that all employees needed to participate in. The heaviest one in terms of time needed was the training regarding our new sexual harassment policy. And that contributed greatly to overtime because officers on a night shift, which is a very busy shift, needed to be called in during the days. Especially, turning to page 14, special events drive overtime, such as Howell Day and 4th of July. A new wrinkle this year in that category was the presence of a police officer associated with the traffic issues at Pop Warner, and that was an overtime expense. We anticipate, now, in addition, I'd like to point out that when officers are on a night shift and they have to come in for court, that drives overtime, but that was slightly offset by increases in court fines and fees, $95,000, not all of which is attributed to police, but a great majority of it is. That's the increase. We are proposing to keep that overtime at that fairly higher number because this year we have a whole set of new regulations we have to follow in terms of staffing the courts, new safety regulations that have been handed down by the office of, or the administrative court office. two other items to point to. We had one very high-profile incident regarding the shootings over at the mall. That incurred a lot of great deal of overtime for us. And also, we are currently experiencing 3 officers who are on active duty.
Who are
On active military duty,
on active military?
which also contributes to the overtime situation.
Sure.
Now, if we look back to, for example, 2002, that was a rather high year, and what you'll see is we have fluctuations in these types of events and training issues, but you add on top of that salaries grow, and so the hourly wage increases as well. So that, in summary, is what we've been able to sort out since our last meeting.
You want to hear my comment?
Sure I do. You have a comment, Mrs. Shoemaker? Go
I'll
right
wait till
ahead.
he's done.
Okay, well, is that in on police overtime?
Yes, but if there's more, if there's more direction to look into and more questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. If not now, then offline as well.
Go ahead, Mrs. Shoemaker.
I don't know where, I don't know where we expect the taxpayers to stop with this police overtime. I think that this has been an issue since I've been here, and has exaggerated and multiplied. My answer to overtime is that, have we looked into any ways to reduce that? I mean, we say it's all right, and we make, and I'm going to use the word excuses. I mean, why is it that we know that we're going to have a Howell Day every year, we know we're going to have a 4th of July every year, and I hear that you say we have incidents which are, and believe me, I'm not saying anything against, because we have a wonderful police department, but what I am saying is that at some point we are not going to be able to afford what we are doing, because in my time that I've been here, I have seen it go from 100,000 to 400,000, and I'm sure when I go out the door soon, we're going to be at 600,000. At some point, we're going to be at close to $1 million in overtime. It makes no sense to me that we haven't found an out for this. And I understand the issues of our contracts. But there definitely has to be an answer to this. One of the things that I myself personally have to do to appease myself, because I, for one, absolutely will not be able to stay in the township if these costs like this continue to occur. And it's unfortunate that we have families that have lived here for years and years and years and years, especially our elderly, that we're just pushing it. We're pushing them right out of the community because we're not bringing balance. We're not finding ways to, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Anybody can come into this community. It seems right now in politics it's fashionable to be a politician, to run a town, to be on a board. But I will tell you that anyone can come in, raise taxes, use overtime, and operate a town. Any of us can do that. We can all do that. We need to find ways to curtail such things. It's incumbent upon every one of us that sit here and every one of you that sit over there to find ways to curtail issues like this. Because I really do think, this is in no way demeaning or saying that our police department isn't a fine police department, because I don't blame it on them. I don't blame it on any one of those officers. I blame it on us. We as management, we are failing to find a way to stop this. It's not the men that are working there. We need to find a way to end this. It may not be fashionable. It may not be favorable. But we absolutely need to find a solution to this problem. And that's my view, only because I've been here and I've watched it grow. Only because I know that the people absolutely, we need the we need what we have, but we have to find a way. Do we hire more officers? What is it that we do? I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer, but I will tell you, for my own appeasement, I I would like to find and study other communities that possibly, Brick or Middletown, that have the population like we do, and find out what it is that, they're working on. And I don't like to compare. I never compared my children to other children when they grew up. So I don't like to really compare, but I need a starting point. I need to know that in most businesses, when they say overtime is wasted time, there are always, sometimes there are reasons, there are circumstances. But when we see this as continuing growth year after year after year after year, it's just business as usual. And it's in my view, it's unacceptable. And that's all I have to say.
All right, any other comments? Mr. Howell, you want to come?
Mayor, if I could, Tom, you and I touched briefly on this last week in the office. I don't know if, is this the right forum to bring that discussion up with the sick day policy?
I think in terms of, if we're just talking about policies and not compromising any negotiating positions, I
All right.
think it's okay.
Okay. One of the things that I had seen in other departments and even in other phases of businesses is, and I'll use 10 as an easy number. If our police officers are afforded 10 sick days a year, I would imagine that a lion's share of the overtime that we get is when an officer calls out sick for whatever reason, and another officer has to come in and cover the overtime expense.
That is, in terms of the structural overtime, not any of these sort of unique things.
Right.
Shift coverage is absolutely the #1 majority driver of overtime.
Right. So,
And not to interrupt, Mr. Howell, to add to that, just from a historical perspective, because I've argued about this for some while, and we lost the issue at the bargaining table, which I respect, but the schedule is inherently and fatally flawed. And when it was unilaterally changed sometime in 2001, outside of the provisions of collective bargaining, and the schedule was changed to 4 10-hour days, we inherently created a shift overlap that guarantees a certain portion of overtime, even if no one actually was called in for overtime, just because of the inherent flawed nature of the contract, because of the overlap. And when somebody goes on vacation or one person calls out sick, the inherent overlap of the 4-10 doesn't work. And that was proven by the chief and scheduling experts that we had look at it. It was something that all of us inherited, and it's very difficult to undo that, as we've tried 2 contracts in a row. That's the inherent issue. Every time somebody goes out, they call out sick, they take a legitimate vacation, whatever the case may be, the 4-10 schedule is the problem.
okay. Well, what I had seen in other, like as I stated, in other towns and other businesses, is at the end of the year, say December 1st, if an officer doesn't use the sick days, which saves us money right off the bat because they're guaranteed the sick days, one way or the other. If they don't take the sick days, on the 15th, they get a check for the amount of those sick days. We didn't incur the cost of having to have someone replace them because they didn't take those 10 days. They were going to get paid for them anyway. So we wind up paying the officer for the 10 days that he may have called out sick, but we didn't incur the cost of paying somebody to cover his time when he didn't come in. So I don't know if that's something that we could look at where, and trust me when I'm saying I don't believe officers are calling in sick when they're not, but it may make it more palatable for them to come to work knowing that at the end of the year they get a bonus, sort of a bonus check. Hey, look, I didn't take my sick days, I get a check for those days right before the holiday.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's something we could look at. I don't know how much that would make a difference in the overtime. I don't know. I don't know that answer.
Okay, I'm fairly certain that would require a contract amendment. So, but what I wanted to do was point out the areas that are driving the overtime, so we all understand together, and then we can work on strategies. And I hear the frustration.
Well, what I would say, and the councilman knows I have great respect for him and his ideas, and this isn't the time or the place to debate it, but I would not be in favor and I think it's an idea worthy of consideration, but on the surface, I would not be in favor of paying someone the sick time, because I think it creates an inherent potential obligation for us, from a precedent perspective, with our other bargaining groups,
Okay.
who may say, hey, what about me? I've come in, and we need to be conscious of how the PBA contract, because they're the largest bargaining group, how that oftentimes sort of drives the behaviors. I mean, it's a good idea, worthy of review, but I think that would be one of the issues. The second is, and maybe this is just my corporate sort of philosophy, sick time is there for when you're sick. And if you're fortunate enough not to be sick, I don't know that we should actually reward or pay you because you weren't sick. Now, clearly, if in the short term it could generate a material ROI, then maybe it's worthy of review. But I just inherently think that those two issues could cause an issue. Now, again, that's the subject of the majority of the council either wanting or not wanting to look at it. That would certainly be my take. Mrs. Dalton, did you want to make a comment on overtime?
I have some thoughts on different opportunities, but I think that probably they're best left for an offline discussion, and I would like an opportunity just to look at the contract and see. I know in other professions, they have something called an on-call position where someone basically is paid to wait to fill in for a sick day. And I would like to see if, maybe that's something. But again, without looking at the contract, I don't know. I'm speaking in complete ignorance as far as what's in that CBA. But as I understand what the town manager's report is, in 2006, we were under budget on total salary and wages for the police,
That's correct.
even with the 413
That's correct.
in overtime. And it looks like overtime has fluctuated. In 2006, it was 413, but in 2005, it was 217. Why was it so low
I'll
in
tell you.
2005? It's a record low. I see a trend, 344 in 2001, 380 in 2002,
That-
303 in 2003, 315 in 2004, and then it dips by $100,000 in
Well,
2005.
when we had our budget cuts, and Mr. Davis will remember this, we made a unilateral decision to eliminate overtime in all departments except police and the Department of Public Works, and a small discretionary amount for the manager's use at the time. And we took the pen and we literally cut police overtime and said that if we had an emergency situation, the manager was to come back and let us know what it was, if it was a crisis that was outside of our control, and they just could not be planned in advance, fine. But we legitimately went in and we cut that overtime very, very significantly. And that's going to be my comment on it when we wrap up these discussions, but I'll wait.
My only response to that is that in the contract, we had this built-in option where the officers could take compensatory time up to 120 hours. And I think that had a great deal to do with it between the years, meaning they weren't taking cash. But now, most of them are at the 120 hours, so they're no longer taking the hours, now they're taking the cash at time and a half.
But I think the other thing to note, and Mr. Filiatro could certainly chime in if I'm misstating something, we made a unilateral decision to take that number and cut it down. Is that right? I don't remember the exact number, but...
I think the number was 225 for the PD. It was 150 overall for the rest of the town.
Correct.
That is correct.
Yeah.
But I think what Mr. Trinexi was saying, one of the reasons we did control the police overtime
Sure.
is the police were not at the 120 hours of compensatory time, because that had just become a part of their contract. So they were willing to take the comp time in lieu of the overtime. That was one of the reasons why we were able to cut it that year.
And what page does it show the 2007 number that is being proposed?
Mayor, that's in the budget sheets.
Do you know what that...
Jeffrey, what is that?
Mr. Filiatro, what is the proposed overtime, if you have it?
Yeah, it's $480,000.
Page 10.
Page J10 on the worksheet.
Oh, okay, 10 on the chart, okay. All right, well, do you want to go on to the next item? Obviously, we're not going to...
Yes, well, and we'll keep looking at this for next week.
I'm just going to put my sort of general comments on a record for what it's worth on this. I think we just need to go back, and we need to materially cut the overtime, and we need to have the chief and the manager report to us on the status of what overtime is looking like. And if we need to make an emergency appropriation, we have a 3% surplus for those emergencies. There's going to be things outside of our control, the Pop Warner football field, until all that situation is permanent. We have to have an officer there because it's just too dangerous. So certainly that is what it is. And I echo Councilwoman Showmaker's remarks. This is not a criticism of the police department at all. The fact of the matter is we have to manage this much more tightly, because I certainly can't sign off on a $480,000 police department overtime number. I absolutely will not go along with it under any condition. What else do you have, Mr. Chinyetsky?
Mayor, on page 16, you had inquired into what, under capital, we had $100,000 identified for an item called intersection improvements. And I would ask the town engineer if he can step forward and have a seat up here and help me out with these. But
Good evening, Mr. Nunziato.
Good evening. Intersection improvements historically has been part of the the capital improvement road project line item. And what we traditionally had done was curb, drainage, sidewalk, and any of the other intersection improvements might have been signage, striping, outside of the public works realm. The speed bumps, some of the property acquisitions for roadway widening, sidewalks, handicap ramp, ADA upgrades, and quite frankly, they happen all over town. Mr. Filiatro over the years has said, with some of the audits, that it would be better served to create an intersection improvement line item, so it wasn't just purely 5 miles of roads, 10 miles of roads. It was actually intersection improvements, and that's basically, it's a catch-all line item. In this case, we've studied what's actually in the line item and some of the older ones, and in this case, we do have some proposed longer-term intersection improvements. For one, Route 33 and Colts Neck Road. We just had a recent meeting with Centex and their consultants. Colts Neck Road is partially township, partially the county, and of course Route 33 is a state highway. So there's going to be a multi-jurisdictional contribution for the traffic signal. That's an unanticipated expense at this point. We don't know what it's going to be. This would be the type of line item we'd use for that. We had instances where Vanderveer and Howell Road, we had to put a guardrail in, that type of situation. There's typically half a dozen to a dozen instances every year where PD will come in and say we had a close call or maybe worse, and we want to come in and either widen the road, improve the line of sight, and it could be anything from removing trees and improving drainage, flooding problems, to right-of-ways and actually infrastructure. So that's basically what this line item does entail.
And I guess for 2007, I know there's going to be some that are not anticipated, but there's got to be something in there that you have anticipated. So what is it that specifically is being called for this year?
Well, we actually have put in the improvements to Easy Street and Newton's Corner Road, which has been a big thorn in some people's eyes. And a good portion of that is going to be property acquisition, because we certainly have to get the piping off the road. And that's, again, with property values the way they are, that's a hard one to kind of calculate.
yeah, that would take up much of it, Mayor.
So Easy Street is going to be the biggest piece.
Yeah.
I mean, is there any emergency amount in the event we have another problem like we did at Vanderveer or someplace else?
Well, we have a line item, again, this is not the first year we've put it in, but these are ones that we anticipate are going to be required for this year, for the 100,000.
Oh, the ones on page 16? I thought those were ones that were 2006.
You don't have that, Bill.
I know, but I'm trying to look at my own notes.
All right.
So in addition to Easy Street, I guess for the council's benefit, we know Easy Street's one of them, but is there something else we know that's been jumping up all year that we need to
Yeah.
tend to that is making up that fairly
Well,
considerable
we
number.
also had, under the previous administration, the traffic signal at Lakewood Allenwood and
Correct.
Newton's Corner. We actually have expanded the scope of that project to also include running the sidewalk contiguous in a southerly direction, which is another negotiation with a second property owner and an extension of the original contract, which was around $140,000, $150,000 for the signal. So there's anticipated expenses there as well.
Another one, Mayor, is we've applied for a community development block grant to create a safe route to schools for a family in town, which would include redoing some curbs, installing curb cuts and ramps. What the grant would fund would not cover the whole thing. So this is where we would pull the matching funds for to make that happen.
Are any other questions for Mr. Nunziato on this? Was that it for the engineer?
That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nunziato.
Thank you.
Do we need to keep him, or can he
No, he can.
have a good night?
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, I would ask Mr. Filiatro to walk you through these forms that he handed out to you called Howell Township Analysis of Insurance.
As far as the analysis of insurance, the front sheet is a recap of the two major categories of insurance. I combined all the liability workman's comp insurance onto one line, where it's shown as 3 lines in a worksheet. I've also shown the health insurance there. Now, the second sheet, if I can insert, the second sheet, what I've done is I've taken the actual costs for the first 5 months on our health insurance, and I've used the May bill, which is the most recent bill, and projected that forward for the end of the year. In doing that and checking the reimbursements and the other charges, I did find that the appropriation on the budget request was a little high. I have plugged into our worksheet and a reduction of $85,000 in that line item based on that projection. And that basically is because we have the most recent figures. We now have 5 months worth of history behind us to work on that. I did do another analysis as far as the health insurance to stay on that, which is the second line. There was $115,000 appropriated for in Homeland Security last year for benefits. Homeland Security has been brought inside CAP, and so we have done away with that category and just folded the police officers back into regular police. So that $115,000 really becomes an offset. There's a reduction of 115 down in Homeland Security and increase 115 here. If I analyze the health insurance without the effect of the $115,000 going in this line item, it would have increased 3.1%, just a little over $100,000.
Let me ask a couple of questions, if I may, Mr. Filiatro.
Sure.
It's my recollection that and we may have actually went for an extended renewal, I don't remember, but we modified our renewal for the medical and pharmacy in February of =06. That was actually when we left the state health benefits plan and went outside the plan. I believe it was February of '06.
Yes.
Did we get a 11-month? Did we get an 11-month renewal, or what did we do in terms of the first anniversary? Was it as of February 1?
It was as of February 1. If you look at my second sheet, the actual billing, you can see the actual billing. They did a catch-up billing in April. That reflects the February increase.
And that's what I noticed. Why?
Yeah, and then it settled back down in May to a 1 month.
Okay, so April, that's what I'm looking at, is the 263.
April really was a February, March, and April increase.
Did they forget to charge us the increase?
It took that long for them to bill us.
So if I was to take the difference between the 188 and the 216, that would actually be the appropriate spread?
Yes, I didn't do a correct analysis, I didn't look at the actual bills, but yes, I would believe so.
Which is, just in dollars, that's 15%. If I look at February, we didn't have any spikes in enrollment, right, from February till now? There was no change in the population.
I haven't analyzed, there certainly possibly could be employees that are coming off single coverage on the family plan.
Okay.
We have that phase in the contract.
Right.
I really have not done that kind of analysis. I haven't looked to see what people switched their coverage at the end of the year and went into a more expensive or less expensive option in the plans. That analysis has not been done.
Okay. The only thing I would offer is that if January and February were fairly stable months, in fact, January, February, and March were, and April was the catch-up month, and May is what the month should look like, then the spread between January and May should really be the net basis of what the percentage increase was passed to us by the insurance company. And I don't remember what it was, but did BGIA give us a letter and a write-up with all the backup that said, please be advised that as of February 1st, here's the renewal information, it's a first year, et cetera, et cetera?
We did receive that.
We did?
Yeah.
Can I mean, if...
Like a copy of that,
Yeah,
Mayor?
please. I would like to see a copy if anyone doesn't disagree. And were we able to find out, I didn't remember from recollection, and I wasn't here over the weekend to go through the files. I think I have it saved somewhere, but I was under the impression that we had secured a second year not to exceed cap with the health insurance company.
I wasn't here when that was
Okay.
negotiated, but I know you requested that.
I really don't recall.
Okay.
I
Mr.
really
Davis,
don't recall
I'm
what we
certain,
did.
from the clerk's office perspective, we would have maintained a copy. I'm interested in getting a copy of the health insurance proposal from BGIA that memorialized the final terms and conditions of the proposed exodus from the state plan into the private marketplace, which we received sometime in the end of November, if memory serves, because you have to give the state plan 60 days. You have to pass a resolution giving them 60 days notice. So I'm going from memory, but I think it was in November that we actually approved it, and that would have had all of the final details. So say sometime in November of 2005, it would have had all of the particulars. And if we could get the renewal backup material from Mr. Migden, I think that would be helpful.
I'll have that asked you right away.
Thank you. So on a net basis, what's the actual increase, Mr. Filiatro, that you've put into the budget from calendar '06 to calendar '07, which is, it's really only 11 months, but...
Net that I put under the health insurance, now with the revised figures, is an increase of $152,000 in the budget appropriation, or about a 3.1 increase.
Okay.
Looking at expenditure versus 07
Sure.
appropriation.
I mean, 3.1 is not terrible. I mean, that's a very favorable rate action, but the backup, I think, would put all of our minds at ease.
Okay.
On the disability and the life, I don't remember from our bargaining agreements, we have an obligation under all of the bargaining agreements, or just some of them, as it relates to offering disability and life insurance?
I don't recall the contracts off the top of my head to know whether they're required under each one of the bargaining agreements. Certainly, we can look at them.
The only thing I would ask, the council agrees, is that disability and life insurance has zero impact on the employee. Obviously, life insurance has an impact, but it wouldn't be at a most favorable time. But disability insurance and life insurance have no impact on the day-to-day aspects of one's coverage. I don't know the last time that this was put out to competitive bid, but the life insurance market in particular is pretty soft right now, and I have to imagine that disability may be worthy of review, and maybe this has already been done. I don't know.
05 or 06, I forget. It was not that long ago that we did send out proposals. We did actually change companies.
I thought we did. I thought we
Yeah,
did
we
put out
may have.
proposals for all of them.
Yes.
When we reviewed them, we did it all.
We had John White,
Yes.
our
fine.
I just didn't remember. I knew it
Well,
was
that's
done, I
dental,
didn't know
I'm not
when.
too sure about. Yeah, I believe that was also a disability in life.
Mayor,
I'm
if
pretty
it,
sure we did do that.
if it's,
We
I'm,
changed the disability carrier.
Mhm.
and just reflecting on your question, I'm absolutely certain that it's offered in a contract.
To everybody. Well, I mean, unless the council feels differently, I would recommend that we ask, I don't know who the broker of record is from memory on the disability and the life insurance. I have no idea. I've kept a distance from who the brokers are on these programs, but I think whoever it is, we should ask them to aggressively market this plan now. And unless the council disagrees, there's no downside in marketing this.
Absolutely.
Anyone disagree? All right, Mr. Chinesky, would you work with whoever the broker of record is, and let's put these out to bid. Do you have a question, Ms. Dalton?
I just, this disability in life is for which particular bargaining units, or is this for the management unit?
It's for all employees.
All employees?
Yeah.
That's the price?
Yeah. This is group discounted term life insurance,
Right.
which is very
Okay,
inexpensive,
okay.
and the
That's
disability is
for all
usually
police-
pennies on the dollar.
Police, everyone.
Police, Public Works, Parks and Rec.
One bargain and everything.
Yeah, I was under the impression that the death benefit may have been different from one bargaining group to the next.
It is.
This is
It
probably
is.
the
It
net
does-
cost.
Does vary, I think, between 10 and 50,000, depending on the bargaining unit.
And that 3.1%, that did or did not include, looks like dental was a continuance, is that right? I mean, absent some fluctuation in enrollment. You didn't contemplate any increase in dental?
No, dental, we're in the second year of a 2-year policy, so
That's what I thought.
no increase anticipated at all this year.
Okay. And then the workman's comp, we haven't talked about that yet, but we've got a, it would appear to be there are some issues there.
Yeah, I stand corrected on one thing. I'm very sorry looking at my notes here. The recalculation of the health insurance is 6% increase for this year.
So it's
the
a
3%. The 3% is my recalculation of liability workman's comp, and it's 11% right now, and I'll explain to you how we got there.
It's 11 in workers' comp?
All
Liability.
workers'
All
comp
insurance
liability
cumulatively.
bonding, yes. There's been a couple things going on. The bonding, the state has come out with new bonding guidelines as far as fidelity bonds on us three lucky people that have to be separately bonded. And they came out with new guidelines as far as recommended coverage and everything. So our fidelity bonding for the CFO, tax collector, and the court administrator has gone from $1,100 to $10,000. Thank you, state of New Jersey. And the guidelines as far as the coverage that we are required to have, they are requiring higher coverages.
Can I ask you a question? Can we cover this with a bank letter of credit from the bank that holds the escrow account and do it that way instead of a bond?
No, but we are working on, there has been a law passed, and the state's coming up with rules, and sometime in '07, we will be able to cut coverage to the joint insurance fund. So we will at least be able to pool this cost with the other 22 towns. But at this point in time, no, we have to have separate bonds until the state actually publishes the regulations.
What if we told the state to stick it in their ear and we went to the bank and got a letter of credit?
Letter of credit's not going to do it. The statute requires a fidelity bond.
Good God.
That's, you're looking at I hate to see a cost that increases by tenfold, but it is $10,000 on a $45 million budget, and in the entire picture of it, that in and of itself is not driving the tax increase, but it is, we start having, these type of increases on every line item, it certainly does have an effect. What had happened last year on workman's comp, we originally budgeted $480,000 for workman's comp claims. So in 2006, excuse me just a minute. That's why my thumb won't get tired. And in
Be a workers' comp case.
In 2006 in workers' comp, we had a self-insured retainage, which I know the mayor will understand, of $25,000, which basically means that we paid the first $25,000 of every claim before the insurance kicked in. We had a bad year last year. We had a large increase in workman's comp claims. And our actual expenses when we got done was almost $669,000 in actual workman's comp expenses that occurred that year. What we did this year through negotiations with the joint insurance fund is negotiated for a $0 or $1 policy with the joint insurance fund. So we no longer pay that $25,000. We are no longer subject to overruns. The dollar is the dollar is the dollar. That's all we'll pay this year on workman's comp. The only thing that, and that's the one that produced 3% pay rate, rate increase. The only thing that is in here in addition to that is based on the joint insurance fund. They estimate that there's about $100,000 worth of claims open from prior years that we are still responsible for under the old retainage. So that money has been provided for in '07 to provide for those bills. Certainly, if those bills those claims don't cost as much and they're closed, we just won't spend the money. But that was based on their estimate over what open claims are on the books through '06 that we will still be required to pay up to the maximum of the $25,000.
Well, $25,000 is the front-end deductible.
Right.
We pay the first $25,000.
Right.
So their estimate of the incurred but unrevealed
Their estimate
claims-
of the tail
Right.
is
$100,000.
about $100,000 to close all the old.
Have they given us a mod analysis of where we've been the last couple of years?
I think I think I may have one in the file. If not, I certainly can get one.
I know that our joint insurance fund is supposed to have a safety element in it, where there's a risk analysis done, and they come to the DPW, and they look at equipment, they look at work processes.
Very, very active one, yes.
They are. We're
Yes.
satisfied with
Yes,
their
they are. They drive us crazy at times. A very, very active safety program.
Contributed to police overtime.
What's that?
Contributed to police overtime.
The risk management?
Yeah, but Mayor, actually, seriously, one of the things that came out of the risk management is we now have a transition to duty policy in place, which we haven't had before. So
Right.
it explains how we can bring people back on
Absolutely.
instead of continuing to accumulate the
Light
workers' comp
duty,
payment.
put them to work,
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor worked on that very closely. Deputy Manager, excuse me, worked on that very diligently once we saw the trend last year. But, knock on wood, I'd report that for 2007, we're having a very good experience, which will be reflected in next year's rates, presumably.
All right, any other questions on Mr. Filiatro's insurance analysis?
No.
All right, you have the Basin management. Would you like to go over that, Mr. Filiatro?
Yeah, there was a request made, I believe it was by the deputy manager, I'm not too...
Deputy Mayor.
But Deputy Mayor, for a 3-year history on the balance of the basin maintenance account. And I actually went a little bit further. I got the last 3 years, and I did update it through April 30th, which is our last time we reconciled our account, over how much is available in that trust account.
And of this amount, this is sitting sitting one of our accounts, earning interest.
Earning interest. It's designed under, I guess you're all familiar with planning board, it's designed to provide for the next 40 years worth of maintenance on these basins. We do have 2 employees that are maintaining basins, are being paid out of this account.
Correct. I remember that well.
We've also identified a couple items under capital to be acquired this year out of that account.
When we need to
Well-
purchase new mowers,
They're in there.
Mowers,
it comes
yes.
out of this, correct?
Yes.
It
Yes.
does now.
The mowers are required for the basin maintenance.
In the Mason dump.
What if they maybe occasionally are required to assist in maintaining some of the basins? Is there a rule of thumb on percentages of?
I certainly would not want to open the town up for criticism from the developers over misuse of their funds they provided for the maintenance of these basins
For 40 years.
for 40 years.
For 40 years. All right, any questions on the basin maintenance account? Okay, what else, Mr. Chuniatsky?
Mayor, that's it for now. Just wanted to follow up on a couple of those items and get more guidance.
All right, so next steps with respect to the budget are, I think we talked about, we all wanted to digest this.
Yep.
And if we're going to be in a position to introduce a week from tonight,
Is that our goal?
Now,
Oh, I'm
our
sorry.
goal is you have a special meeting scheduled for the 21st, which is our day for the school budget, and our goal is hopefully be able to adopt by then, introduce by the 21st.
But we are putting time on the agenda next week to continue to review,
All right.
to give you the information you were looking for.
here's what I would ask of the council. If we're going to be prepared to introduce on the 21st, we've got to really spend some time next week, for the first time, really debating what we want to do, what are our priorities, what we want to add, change, delete, whatever it is. What else do we have on the agenda next week that could consume some of our time that we could potentially alter?
We have a number of ordinances, some hearings, I believe.
If I may.
Go ahead, sir.
As far as the introduction of the budget, other than perhaps comments and feedback from council over last-minute items or items that from this week to next week they want discussed or analyzed, we can I think we have a budget that's close enough for introduction that I don't think, it sounds like you have a pretty full agenda next week, that you have to spend a lot of time on this, analyzing every account again. You can change the budget on adoption. And certainly that gives you another 28 days to look at it, but we need to get the clock running as far as introduction to adoption, so that we can pass our 28-day waiting period. So you certainly can amend at the public hearing in June now, which would be the date for adoption if we stick to the 28 days. So we're not tied to the numbers that you introduce this month. You certainly do have another month in which to make changes, in which to make modifications.
Okay. Do we have, how much time have you allotted for next week?
Mayor, I thought we would spend about an hour. And what we can do is, any ordinances that might run into that, we can limit debate and hold the public hearing for a future meeting. I don't believe any of the ordinances that we'll be dealing with are pressing. So if there seems to be a lot of interest in a particular ordinance, we can definitely hold the debate for the following meeting. So we will carve out time.
Okay. I would just maybe recommend we all come with whatever our different discussion points are. We'll go right down, give everybody the floor, take everybody's comments person by person, and then attempt to make whatever alterations and be ready to act on the 21st.
Okay.
All right, is there anything else for public discussion?
No, sir.
Council members, anything else for public? I do have something just to mention in front of the council. I have a letter here from Ford, Scott, Sendenberg, and Kennedy. I believe these are the consultants that the township is using for the school board budget review. And I don't know whether you got this, Mr. Chuniatsky, but this is in essence a letter, and they want it to be signed, memorializing the terms that they have proposed to perform the services. And so, since I'm authorized to sign these things, I was uncomfortable doing it, absent you or a member of your team, just making certain that this is consistent with
Please
what
pass
we've
it
agreed
on.
to. So I'm going to just pass it down, and if you could review it before I sign it, I would appreciate it. Is there anything else?
Mayor, if I could just have
Go
a
right
couple
ahead.
minutes. Every week, when we do the Pledge of Allegiance, you ask that everybody take a moment for silent observation for the men and women who are serving overseas. Then I happen to receive my May copy of the American Legion magazine, and there's a story of one of those people in there, and if I could, I'd like to read this story that's in here. It's the Medal of Honor citation for Corporal Jason Dunham, United States Marine Corps, Company K, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marine, 1st Marine Division. And date and place of action was Carvajal, Iraq, 14 April 2004. And the citation reads as follows: for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity, at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty while serving as a rifle squad leader, 4th Platoon, Company K, 3rd Battalion, 7 Marines Reinforced, Regimental Combat Team 7, 1st Marine Division Reinforced, on 14 April 2004. Corporal Dunham's squad was conducting a reconnaissance mission in the town of Carvajal, Iraq, when they heard rocket-propelled grenade and small arms fire erupt approximately 2 kilometers to the west. Corporal Dunham led his combined anti-armor team towards the engagement to provide fire support to their battalion commander's convoy, which had been ambushed as it was traveling to Camp Huseba. As Corporal Dunham and his Marines advanced, they quickly began to receive enemy fire. Corporal Dunham ordered his squad to dismount their vehicles and led one of his fire teams on foot several blocks south of the ambushed convoy. Discovering 7 Iraqi vehicles in a column attempting to depart, Corporal Dunham and his team stopped the vehicles to search them for weapons. As they approached the vehicles, an insurgent leaped out and attacked Corporal Dunham. Corporal Dunham wrestled the insurgent to the ground, and in the ensuing struggle saw the insurgent release a grenade. Corporal Dunham immediately alerted his fellow Marines to the threat, and aware of the imminent danger and without hesitation, Corporal Dunham covered the grenade with his helmet and body, bearing the brunt of the explosion and shielding his Marines from the blast. In an ultimate and selfless act of bravery in which he was mortally wounded, he saved the lives of at least 2 fellow Marines. By his undaunted courage, intrepid fighting spirit, and unwavering devotion to duty, Corporal Dunham gallantly gave his life for his country, thereby reflecting great credit upon himself and upholding the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the United States Naval Service. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. You know, just to reflect for a minute, when I took over as mayor, we were already at war, and I made it my business to make certain that at every meeting we would take a moment of silent observation, and we've stuck to it. People have actually disagreed with me on doing that. I've gotten, well, the calls and emails I get, someday I'm going to write a book. But there were those who felt that it was inappropriate and that I was forcing people to be in support of the war, forcing people to pray. And for the next year and a half, whatever I have left, as long as I'm in this chair, we will always have a moment of silent observation in light of the troops. So thank you for sharing that with us. That's a very, very emotional story. All right, Mr.
That young
Chinesky.
man was 20 years old.
20 years old. Well, on that note, any other business for public?
No, sir, just some closed session items.
All right, I would ask that you please read the, you know, before we do that, some other folks have come in. This was our public participation meeting. If anyone would like to be recognized, you're certainly welcome to do so. Anyone from the public who'd like to be heard? Okay. Would you please read the statement, Mr. Davis?
Yes, sir. What are we going in for?
Personnel litigation. And contractual issues.
Whereas Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 13 of the New Jersey Revised Statutes require that the public shall not be excluded from any meetings of a public body unless a resolution authorizing such exclusion is adopted at a public meeting, and whereas the Township Council of the Township of Howell has determined that such a closed meeting is required to discuss certain matters which are exempted from consideration with the public in attendance under New Jersey Revised Statutes 10:4-12, namely personnel matters, litigation, and contract issues. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Howell that the public shall be excluded from the next portion of this meeting, and the Township Council will not, Tom?
Will not.
Reconvene?
Correct, will not.
Reconvene in public session thereafter. Be it further resolved that minutes will be kept of the meeting in closed session, and the time and the circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public cannot be determined at this time.
We need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any remarks? Again, for the benefit of the public, we will not be coming back into regular session after we adjourn from executive. Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes?
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes.
All yes,
Okay.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Need a motion to adjourn the public portion.
Sure, we need a motion to please adjourn the regular public portion.
moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, adjourned.